Was Iryna Zarutska a young refugee murdered violently by a madman? Decarlos Dejuan Brown Jr, 34, is charged with one count of committing an act causing death on a public transportation system. Iryna Zarutska, 23, was a young woman living the American dream. Her horrific murder is a direct result of failed soft-on-crime policies that put criminals before innocent people. Decarlos Dejuan Brown. His name is now synonymous with a chilling act of violence that occurred on public transportation. At 34, he is expected to be convicted of a violent and incomprehensible crime. He murdered a young woman without provocation or motive. She managed to survive the Russian war. She was a refugee who chose the country that would provide her with safety and fulfill her long-awaited American dream. She never imagined her decision would have such a fatal outcome, with a horrific death that would cut her life short. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Background of the incident. Iryna Zarutska had recently arrived in the United States from Ukraine to escape the war with Russia. Zarutska began working immediately after obtaining her work permit, helping at a senior center and a pizzeria, and caring for neighborhood animals. Zarutska was kind and hard-working, and much loved by her family and close friends. Iryna came here seeking peace and safety, and instead, her life was taken away from her in the most horrific way, a family spokesperson said in the statement. Zarutska had also recently moved in with her partner. She was taking courses at a community college to improve her English. Many share the opinion that Brown, a repeat offender, should not have been on the streets. Suspect in fatal stabbing of Ukrainian refugee on North Carolina train faces federal charges and the death penalty. The attack. On August 22, 2025, in Mecklenburg County, Western District of North Carolina, at approximately 21:46 hours, Iryna Zarutska, she boarded the Lynx Blue Line, light rail train in Charlotte. The victim can be seen boarding the car and sitting in the row across from Brown. She was sitting there sending a text message from her cell phone saying she was on her way home. Approximately 4 minutes later, at approximately 21:50 hours, Brown pulled a knife from his pocket and unfolded it before striking the victim 3 times in the back. A man had stabbed a woman. The people in the same car watched in panic as a young woman was fatally attacked with the knife held by a black man. They saw the blood. Without warning, the man raised his hand and stabbed his victim 3 times from behind. She curled into a fetal position and felt the stabs. Her terrified face looked up at her attacker. After the attack, suspicious blood can be seen dripping onto the ground as Brown walked away from the victim. The victim, later identified as Iryna Zarutska, had suffered fatal stab wounds. A knife and other items were recovered at the scene. Brown was riding a light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina. He allegedly stood up with a pocket knife, abruptly stabbed a nearby woman, then walked away. The victim, Iryna Zarutska, was a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee who worked at a pizza parlor and hoped to become a veterinary assistant. Haunting security camera footage shows her curled up weakly as she bleeds to death in her restaurant uniform. In a phone call from jail after his arrest, Brown, who reportedly has schizophrenia, told his sister that Zarutska had been trying to read his mind. The family lawyer's statement said relatives became concerned when Zarutska, who had texted her partner to say she was en route to their residence, hadn't arrived within a reasonable time. Her phone's location alerted them that she was still at the station, it said. Upon arriving at the station, they were devastated to learn that Iryna had died at the scene. Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officers responded to the 1800 block of Camden Road. The victim was in the rear car of the train near a large amount of blood, with a single stab wound in the middle of her neck, the complaint says. Investigators found a pocket knife and a red shirt soaked in suspected blood at the scene, according to the complaint. Brown was arrested on the outbound LYNX Blue Line platform at the station where the incident was reported. He was initially charged with first-degree murder. On August 22, 2025, At approximately 21:55 hours, officers of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department (CMPD) Central Division received a call for service related to an assault with a deadly weapon that occurred on the Lynx Blue Line, located at the Katz East-West Boulevard. Station, 1821 Camden Road, Charlotte, North Carolina 28203. Comments from the 911 call advised a woman had been stabbed by a black male wearing a black shirt, light blue jeans, and an orange hooded sweatshirt. CMPD officers responded to the scene and arrested Brown on the outbound Lynx Blue Line platform located at the same CATS station as the call for service, 1821 Camden Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. CMPD officers also located a folding pocket knife near the outbound light rail platform. At the time of Brown's arrest, his clothing matched the suspect's clothing description as given by the 911 callers. Additionally, Brown had a laceration to his right hand. Brown was arrested and then transported to the Atrium Main Hospital to be treated. CMPD located the victim in the rear car of the CATS train marked 316A at the inbound platform. The victim, subsequently identified as IZ, was laying on her back, deceased, next to a large amount of blood, with a single stab wound in the middle of her neck and a small cut to her left knee, with her arms by her side and her legs extended out. The victim was wearing a black t-shirt, khaki pants, and black Nike shoes. CSI crime scene. Investigators responded to the scene and collected the pocket knife, which was covered in suspected blood in addition to a red shirt soaked in suspected blood. CMPD CSI also collected swabs from suspected blood on the platform and buccal, hand, and fingernail swabs from the victim. CMPD CSI also collected other items located on the victim's person and in the seat where the victim sat prior to the attack. CMPD detectives obtained surveillance footage from inside the light rail car. Consequences of the attack. Attorney General Pamela Bondi stated, "I have directed my attorneys to prosecute Decarlos Brown Jr., a repeat offender with a criminal record, for murder. We will seek the maximum penalty for this unforgivable act of violence. He will never see the light of day again as a free man." The brutal attack on Iryna Zarutska on the Charlotte light rail was a shameful act that should never happen in America, said FBI Director Kash Patel. The FBI immediately moved to assist in this investigation to ensure justice is served and that the perpetrator is never again released from prison to commit crimes. I want to thank Attorney General Bondi for her handling of today's federal charges, which are the first step toward justice for Iryna and her family, as well as for the millions of Americans who deserve to live in our great cities, free from being targeted by violent criminals. The FBI jumped to assist in this investigation immediately to ensure justice is served and the perpetrator is never released from jail to kill again. Legal proceedings and sentencing. Justice Department charges light rail attacker with federal crime. On September 9, 2025, a federal criminal complaint was filed in U.S. District Court in Charlotte, charging Decarlos Dejuan Brown Jr., 34, with a federal crime in connection with the fatal attack on Iryna Zarutska on the city's light rail system. Brown is charged with one count of committing an act causing death on a public transportation system. An affidavit was filed in support of a criminal complaint charging Decarlos Dejuan Brown Jr. Brown with violating Title 18 of the United States Code, Sections 1992 and 1993, terrorist attacks or other violence against a mass transit system. This affidavit contains information necessary to support probable cause for the criminal complaint. The information contained in this affidavit is based on my personal participation in the investigation of the case, and from information provided to me by other special agents and task force officers, as well as other federal, state, and local law enforcement officers. Since this affidavit is being submitted for the limited purpose of establishing probable cause for the issuance of a criminal complaint, Below is an extract that supports the probable cause, in the conclusion which reads verbatim. Facts in support of probable cause. Based upon my training and experience and the facts of this investigation, I submit that there is probable cause that on or about August 22, 2025, within the Western District of North Carolina and elsewhere, the defendant, Decarlos Dejuan Brown Jr., did knowingly and without lawful authority and permission commit an act, including the use of a dangerous weapon with the intent to cause death and serious bodily injury to one or more persons on a terminal, structure, track, and facility used in the operation of a mass transportation vehicle which was carrying passengers and employees at the time of the offense, and the conduct was engaged in, on, against, and affecting a mass transportation provider engaged in interstate commerce, to wit, the Charlotte Area Transit System, in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Sections 1992. I request that the court issue a criminal complaint and arrest warrant for the same, Decarlos Brown Jr., a repeat offender with a history of violent crimes. This man was charged 14 times. There's been numerous encounters with police departments. He was arrested by CMPD in January, but he was still on the streets, so cases like these need to be resolved. Brown's mental capacity has been called into question. Brown has a criminal history dating back to 2007. In 2014, he was arrested on charges of robbery with a dangerous weapon and possession of a firearm by a felon. He was convicted and served just over 5 years in prison before he was released and placed on parole in September 2020. Brown has a criminal history spanning over a decade, including felony breaking and entering and robbery with a dangerous weapon, for which he served a 5-year prison sentence, according to court records. Reactions and statements. The random and unprovoked killing of a young woman in North Carolina several weeks ago has become a viral video, a political football, and a powerful right-wing talking point, even as the horror and anger her death has provoked obscures what experts say is a vital story about the failures of the American mental health system. Crimes like this also affect everyone who relies on mass transportation to get to and from work and go about their daily lives, and federal charges are necessary to protect the public and ensure confidence in our transportation systems. Victim information. Zarutska was buried in Charlotte on the 27th of August. Family members who were also in the U.S. as refugees attended the funeral, but her father, who cannot leave Ukraine due to wartime restrictions, had to watch by video call. The Ukrainian embassy offered to help repatriate her body for burial, but her family chose to bury her in the United States. She had fallen deeply in love with the American dream. Additional details. The alleged perpetrator, Decarlos Brown Jr., 34, has a long history of problems with the law and mental health issues. He had been arrested 14 times and served a 5-year stint for armed robbery. Brown had also come to believe that there was something alien and malevolent inside him, a man-made material, he told people, possibly a computer chip implanted by the government that was fighting him for control of his body. Earlier this year, Brown was arrested for allegedly making unfounded 911 calls and released after signing a written promise to reappear in court. Viral content online has claimed that Brown targeted Zarutska specifically because she was white, though as of now there is no evidence that he did. Brown was offered treatment but resisted accepting it. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia but refused medication. At one point, his mother asked a hospital to admit him, but was told, she said, that the hospital could not force a person to accept treatment. At another point, a mental health facility kept him for inpatient treatment but released him after 2 weeks. Experts point out that cases like Brown's illustrate two long-standing and overlapping debates about the treatment of mental illness. One concerns institutionalization, the treatment of serious mental illness in specific institutions segregated from wider society. And the other concerns the involuntary treatment of those who need treatment but refuse it.